Welcome back to part 2 of this special edition BRFCS podcast, in which Bill Arthur is interviewing Steven Caldwell.
So you left Sunderland for Burnley in January 2007, and you just mentioned about Steve Cotterill being the manager there. Did you have any other offers, or was?
Yeah, I did. I had a few. They're leaving me right now. I think Coventry were interested.
Right.
Plymouth were interested.
But presumably, the attraction of Burnley was relatively close to your home in the northeast.
Yeah, no, it actually wasn't really that. It was more. I sort of felt like the clubs were in the same level at the time. I mean, all clubs were in the Championship, and I guess Plymouth was a bit far. I don't think I really. But Coventry were a big club, and I was thinking about Coventry. I'm sure Adrian Heath was the manager at the time. It's crazy thinking back, you know, and especially when you bump into these guys' future in life. Adrian's a guy obviously coaching in Minnesota, and I know pretty well now in North America.
Yeah.
But there was opportunities there. But Steve was so persistent. I went to Burnley. It was the only one that I went. I visited, and I met the staff, and Steve kind of took me through the ideas for the team. And then I went away, and I was mulling it over, and, you know, obviously money was an issue, and we were trying to get to the number, the contract that I needed, and Steve just wouldn't let it go. He was calling me all the time. He was mad keen on me getting there, which is a great feeling.
Yeah,
you know?
It's something you really wanted, and somebody's making a real effort to get you in there.
Yeah, and then you go for a guy who's pushed you at one club, and you've got this guy that's desperate for you to come, and in the end, everything just aligned, and it was sort of happening. And I don't even know at that time if I was 100% into the move. It was happening too fast for me, and like I say, I wasn't really ready to leave Sunderland, but it was happening, and it was time, and I signed with about 10 minutes to spare on the deadline. I was going to Burnley.
You hadn't been there long when you had yet another change of manager, because Steve Cotterill left, I think, partway through that season. Owen Coyle came in. Yeah,
so Steve, we finished off that first season under Steve, and we just survived relegation. We survived it comfortably in the end, but we were on a 17-game losing streak, or we didn't win for 17 games, and so.
I was looking at the stats, and I think when Cotterill left, you were 13th, and then Owen Coyle joined, and you moved as high as 7th. Yeah, and then sort of slipped down again a little bit and finished in 13th.
Yeah, we started we survived that first season. The next season, Steve started the season, and we were back and forward. And Steve had put together a good squad, but I don't think we were getting the maximum for the players. And anyway, it was decided he moved on, and Owen came in, and Owen gave us a new lease of life. We had a little bit of quality, a few loan signings and some bits in the goal, but it was back and forward, mid-table that season, and it was sort of heading into the next season where we made some signings that it started to get really interesting.
Right, yeah. I was going to say, I mean, they talk about the new manager bounce. Is that a genuine thing? I mean,
it can be. I think that it depends if things are really going off the rails when the previous manager loses his job, gets sacked or let go. That can be, you know, these days sometimes managers lose the job and they probably shouldn't really lose it, and it can go the opposite way. But I think that Steve was starting to kind of get a bit stressed by the job, and so Owen coming in gave people a new lease of life. The ones that are not playing think they've got a chance of playing, and the ones that are playing have to prove to the manager that they should stay in the team. So you definitely get a bounce by that. Yeah. But then ultimately it comes down to, is this guy going to take us forward? Does this guy have the right ideas and tactics and man management to improve this team? And Owen did.
Well, clearly, I mean, 2008, 2009 was the season you were promoted. I mean, that must have been an unforgettable season for you, because you were captain.
Yeah.
Finished 5th in the Championship and went to Wembley for the playoffs.
Yeah, I never like to grade or rate things, but I'd be hard pushed to think of a better season than that one. It was absolutely phenomenal, and we had pieced little bits together. We had some good pros, some good players. You know, Owen brought in I think he brought in Eagles and Martin Patterson at that close season. Stephen Thompson played a lot of games for us alongside the Robbie Blakes and Wade Elliott's and Michael Duffs, Clark Carlisle, the guys that we had there, or Brian Jensen. And you could feel something building. We played 60 plus games, 61, 62 games. We got to semi-final of the League Cup.
Yeah.
We were really unlucky not to beat Tottenham Hotspur in the 2-leg semi. We were brilliant. In the second leg, it was I was suspended, so I missed the game. I did TV, actually. I've never seen a performance like it. You're 4-1 down to Tottenham Hotspur, and you need to win 3-0 to take it into extra time.
That was the score at the end.
We did it. It was just a phenomenal performance, and we just miss out. They score in extra time, and then we get to the last 16 FA Cup, and all these things played into the fact that we just believed that we were capable. We were a little bit inconsistent, but we had the players. We knew we could hurt anybody in our day. We had a manager who believed in us, who gave us such confidence. Just put us out there every game with us believing that we could beat anybody that came, especially that came at Turf Moor, but anybody in any day. And then, we managed to get in the playoffs. And at that moment, we were just rolling along. And I was so confident we were going to win the playoff. Every professional wants to play at Wembley. So it was my dream. And I think maybe if you're Scottish, there's... even when you're young, you're like, well, this needs to happen, that needs to happen to play at Wembley. But I got the opportunity with Burnley against Sheffield United, and I remember the day so vividly. It was just, you wake up in the morning, and again, that confidence that we had. Went for breakfast, the lads were laughing and joking. I just knew we were ready, and I was trying to be very cautious because I felt like I was too confident. Like, come on, get your head right, anything can happen. And so, being the kind of analytical captain that I was trying to keep everybody ready. But I just knew we were going to win. We were just ready, and it wasn't our greatest game. We didn't play that well, but we became really solid at the end of that season.
Yeah, I have to raise a question of Owen Coyle, given that he later went to Blackburn. Be remiss of me not to, but he obviously had something about him that came through that season, but he's never repeated that anywhere else.
No.
I mean, was it just a combination of circumstances? I mean, what happened that made that he was so successful that season but never achieved that success again?
He was very successful at Burnley because he built up to that season. So I think there was, half a season before or 3/4 of a season, and then that amazing season. And then I thought he was very successful in his first year or so at Bolton, even though it was on a different scale. It was about staying up. And what Owen does really well is that he allows people to play free. He allows people to be confident and get on with their jobs. And what he's not that great at is the tactical stuff. He's not a very tactical or technical manager. So
he depends upon his coaches and the players?
The coaches for sure, but the group of players is really important. And I think what Owen did really well was understand it. The group of players at Burnley who were just a really perfect fit. And he was part of recruiting that group, and he was also fortunate that he got a majority of that group, 3/4 of that group. But he got more out of that 3/4 than Steve could get.
Right.
So that has to be recognised as well. Clark Carlisle was unbelievable under Owen Coyle. I was fantastic. Wade Elliott went to another level. Chris McCann. Jay Rodriguez developed under Owen Coyle. Robbie Blake had the best time of his career.
So that's a man management thing. You say all these players improved individually, and
we were a bunch of guys who had varying levels of success at lower league or at other clubs, and we ended up at Burnley by hook or by crook, and we were at this club, and he gave us this belief and this opportunity to go and overachieve and do something that hadn't been done for 30 or 40 years.
Did you, as captain, and some of those senior players, did you have a big input into the tactics?
Not so much the tactics, but Owen was smart enough to let us go and run the changing room.
Right.
Decide on the rules, decide on everything, Okay. So definitely not the tactics. Owen picked the team, Owen picked the tactics, Owen gave us that swashbuckling style that we played with. He never interfered in anything. He trusted in me. He trusted in the senior pros to go and take care of the changing room. That was our responsibility. If somebody came in and they were acting a different way, we just nipped that in the bud immediately.
So maybe that's something that he didn't have at subsequent clubs.
Maybe, because that's important that you recognise that you have that leader or the leaders that are capable of doing that. And I think he was fortunate that he had that at Burnley, and I also think that he was very smart to allow us to use our strengths in that regard and to go with it, and he trusted us.
I mean, his time at Blackburn, a certain minority, I would think, of the fans didn't want him because of his Burnley connection. But the majority, I think, didn't want him because he hadn't been as successful as he was at Burnley. And it was a really unfortunate thing because the rumours were that Neil Warnock was going to take over.
Right.
Finance director went away and came back from holiday and said, we have an outstanding candidate in Owen Coyle. And that didn't go down well. But anyway, I'll leave it there for Owen Coyle. One of the things about Burnley coming up to the Premier League then was that after quite a break, Blackburn and Burnley had some local derbies.
Yes.
I mean, you'd experienced a local derby between Newcastle and Sunderland, presumably, which is a big thing. Were you aware of the importance to the fans of the Blackburn-Burnley derby?
Yeah, I was. I don't think I was aware till I came to Burnley, but then I recognised that it was a massive game. I played in the one at Ewood Park. I didn't play in the return fixture at Turf Moor, but I played at Ewood Park, and it was just we shut down the motorways because kids going the overpasses and stuff
crazy
like
now,
that.
Isn't it?
Yeah,
I used to be able to just go to Burnley or wherever and go into the ground, but as you say,
and if you live in Blackburn and you're a Burnley fan, you have to come to Burnley to go to Blackburn, and it's like the security's crazy, and so then you go, okay, this is a real derby, and you can feel the tension, the build up, the week, which I love. I'm missing it now thinking about it, and it was a fantastic game. I think we lost 3-2.
Yeah, Robbie Blake scored.
He scored a great goal in the early stages,
I saw
didn't
that
he?
on YouTube the other night.
And then I think Wade scored a really good goal as well for us, Wade Elliott. And Franco De Santo, who became my teammate at Wigan a bit later, he had a wonderful game. He scored a couple of goals. Maybe
I think it was 3-1 by. Robbie Blake scored, and then it was 3-1 by half time.
Yeah, but a great experience and real. You could sense the atmosphere in the stadium.
I mean, what's it like leading up to a derby game? I mean, do you get more hyped up for it? Do you go out on the field and think, right, we've got to make our mark straight away?
Yeah, you have to. I think you have to. You need to match the intensity, but the issue is just keeping that on the right level. You don't want to get too hyped.
Yeah, don't want to get a red card in 5 minutes or something. Yeah.
So it was that fine line between what was right, and I think we did that. That season was really tough for me because I had a lot of injuries. Even when I was fit, I was injured. Right. I had real problems with my groins and my pelvic area, and so I think back to a lot of the games. It was a little bit bittersweet because I was either taking painkillers or going through pain just to play, and it was frustrating because I'd waited all this time and I was so proud to be captain of a team like Burnley in the Premier League, and I sort of couldn't enjoy it because I was in pain.
Of course, you went down again that season.
Yeah.
The Lancashire Telegraph at the time speculated that relegation was not due to Owen Coyle leaving or Brian Laws, but just to the poor away record. But I mean, it struck me when you read something like that, isn't that something that the manager should be addressing? Well,
so my answer on that is that we wouldn't have got relegated if Owen had stayed.
Right.
Owen went to Bolton in the January, and we would have stayed up. We had some very winnable fixtures, and I know the way we were thinking and playing, that we would have went into the games with a great deal of confidence, and I think we would have got the points needed to stay up.
Right.
And so, the away form was poor under Owen, but that was because we were an attacking team.
Right. Yeah.
A little bit like what we spoke about at the start of this show,
Yeah.
So we were an attacking side, and then Brian came in with a complete opposite mentality.
Right.
Brian looked at the away form, looked at the fact that we were maybe conceding too many goals, went, right, we need to tighten up and bunker in and be defensive and hang in a game, and all these words that are very relevant, and Burnley are playing like that now, but that's not how that Burnley team played. It wasn't even like you got an 8-week pre-season to get that right. It was like you transitioned during games, during the season, and I don't think that worked, and I think that was a bad choice by the Burnley board. Not because, no disrespect to Brian or the coach that he was, but it was so different for Owen, it was a bad choice to bring him in.
Just as an aside, I'm going to take this opportunity to mention that I too have a Burnley connection.
Okay.
I might be a Blackburn supporter. I actually went to school with the Burnley chairman, Barry Kilby.
Oh, right, I know Barry well.
And we played in the school team together, and also in that team at the time was Martin Dobson.
Okay, yeah.
So I just thought I'd get in that little plug for my limited football career.
Great, yeah.
Okay, so from the highs of one season to the lows of another, and then you were released at the end of that season by Burnley, weren't you?
Yeah. My contract was up, and I think that with any new manager, if you're the previous manager's captain, a lot of times you're the one that needs to go, and so I didn't play a lot of games that year. I wasn't fit, so yeah, it was sort of an inevitable thing. I wasn't expecting Burnley to offer me a contract. They probably were never going to offer me a contract that would have made me stay.
Yeah.
So there was no real shock for me. I think it was just inevitable that we went our separate ways. No animosity between Brian and I or anything like that. It was just one of the things, and I was going to go in for another challenge, and I needed to go and play somewhere else.
And you went to Wigan?
I did, yeah. It took a while. I was without a job for a little bit that summer, and I was starting to get a bit worried. There was a few, nearly went to Leeds again. Sheffield Wednesday were interested. Alan Irvine was head coach.
Who was at Wigan? Who was the Wigan manager at the time?
Roberto Martinez.
Right, okay.
So the Wigan came about because Leeds kind of fell through, and Sheffield was an option under Alan, but they were League One, and I didn't really want to drop to that level.
Right.
And so I got a chance to go and train at Wigan for a week or two.
Mm.
My brother was there, he was captain at the time, and so Roberto took me in, and my brother was coming off a hip operation. She was going to miss 3 months, and so I think it was a good fit that I went there. I understood that I wasn't going to be a regular first team player, which was a bit unusual in the previous 5 or 6 seasons, so I kind of took a chance there, and I went, and I trusted in Roberto, and I went to kind of learn a different style and a different experience, and I'm glad I did it again. Right. A big learning period for me and my thought process under a unique coach in Roberto, a total football guy, a guy that believed in process of how you play, how you build up the game, and kind of went against what I'd felt and believed before, changed the way that I thought in a lot of areas, and I commend him in that because I'm quite a stubborn guy, but we had some great discussions, again, a lot of respect between us, and I'm glad I got to play for him.
But then you moved on to Birmingham, didn't you, for your last couple of seasons, and had the opportunity to play in the Europa Cup? Played
in Europa League with Birmingham. Wonderful experience to play with, again, a club that hadn't been there for 50 years. One of the best games, atmosphere-wise, I ever played in was the play-in game that we beat Nacional from Portugal.
Right.
We drew 0-0 in the first leg in Madeira, and we should have won. We were a better team. I think I hit the post, actually. We hit the post, we had some chances. And then we came back to St Andrews, and it was packed. Packed. Yeah, and I don't think St Andrews has been packed like that for years, you know. And we beat them 3-0. Young Nathan Redmond, who's now at Southampton, scored a wonderful goal. And it was just an amazing night. You could hardly hear yourself on the field. It was so loud and such a great atmosphere. Our kit man Den at the time, he'd been at Birmingham for 20, 30 years. We watched him all his life. He said he'd never seen an atmosphere like that at St Andrews for many a year. And
you got to the playoffs that year as well, but lost out in the playoffs.
Yeah, I got injured that year at Portman Road at Ipswich. I really had got a bad one. My groin, I ruptured my groin, and so I was out the playoffs. We played Blackpool.
So that season concluded your playing career in England.
Yep.
Just as a little sub note, I noticed that your last game was the 4th of May 2013 at Birmingham, when you were a substitute for Birmingham against Blackburn.
Yeah, was that against Blackburn? Was that? I can't remember that.
Anyway, so then you made the big move to Toronto. I mean, how did that come about?
Well, a Blackburn legend. That's how it came about. Ryan Nelsen was the new head coach for Toronto FC. So Ryan needed some reinforcements here. Toronto were a team that was struggling for a number of years, and they needed some leadership and some direction, and Ryan had earmarked me as that guy. So I was chatting back and forward with my agent, and then Ryan wanted me to come immediately. Mm-hmm. I had played a lot of games for Birmingham, 45 games or something that season, and I needed a break, I felt. So he said, well, Ryan wants you now, call Ryan up and explain, and I'm sure you'll like him. We had played against each other, but we weren't friends, we didn't know each other. So I called Ryan up and to tell him I'd come in July if he still wanted me, and he convinced me to come the next week. So I come back through, and I said to my wife, she said, did you tell Ryan, I'll leave next week to Toronto, I'm getting on a plane. She was like, you what? We're supposed to be going to Florida and different places. So that was it. I could tell someone in Ryan's voice that this was right, and I made that leap and I took the decision, and I'm glad to say it's one of the best decisions I ever made.
Well, as I say, British listeners probably don't know, but you very quickly became a TFC favourite and revered by the fans, and you captained the team.
Yeah.
And I know from my own experience of watching the team that you improved them immensely from a defensive viewpoint. And I read a stat the other day that said that you improved the goals against average from 1.5 to 1 in a very quick time.
Yeah, it was exactly that. We were in need of a leader. We had some good young players. We needed to make some roster changes, we call it, in North America again, and we were going to go through that transitional period. But it was more than that. It was the investment from Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, the parent company of TFC, and the sort of promise of better times ahead that just made this such an exciting project. And so within weeks, Ryan and I were pretty close friends. We still are. We keep in touch. He's a brilliant guy and a brilliant coach. He's not coaching. Ryan's a businessman. He's doing loads of different things. Right. He's such a successful guy. Ryan,
yeah, because I want, as a Blackburn fan, I wanted him to be successful here. Having come here myself and watched TFC, and I sort of wanted him to succeed. But I mean, why do you think he didn't?
Well, I just think Ryan's such a successful guy. Ryan could have played cricket for New Zealand. Right. He played soccer at such a high level. He could have he was at Stanford. He had the opportunity to go to Harvard. He's a smart guy.
Yeah.
And I think that he came here. I thought he was a great coach. I thought he had some great ideas. I think that the situation didn't develop like he would like, and in the end, he was a victim of circumstance. There was some changes, and that's the way it went. And he moved on. And unfortunately, when you've got options and you're a successful guy, it's not a wise move to be a head coach, is it? Because you're going to keep getting sacked. So he made the sensible decision, much to my chagrin, because I wanted him to be a coach, and I thought he had the potential to be a very good one, but he's doing other things now.
Yeah, I mean, the standard in MLS is, I first came to Canada in 2008, and the standard since then has improved immeasurably. It's just so much better. I mean, for the benefit of British listeners, how would you equate that with English football now, the standard in MLS?
Well, the question I get asked more than any other is that, and it's very difficult. I'll try and explain why. The parity within MLS is great. The difficulties in travel, for example, is... at Newcastle, we'd turn up to a strip, we'd put a bag through a little check, and we'd walk on a jet, and here you have to stand in the Air Canada line like everybody else. Yeah, there's some little privileges, but it's tough. You need to work out when you eat, when you drink. You're travelling fast distances. You're playing in the summer. It's 100 degrees in DC and in Kansas and in Houston.
Or Mile High in Denver or whatever.
So there's challenges everywhere you go. You travel 3 time zones to go and play on the West Coast, and these are things that make it really difficult to compare it, and they make it a tough league. And when I first came here, I think the quality of the squads was not what it should be. I was very surprised with quality of a lot of players, and indeed the league in general. But there was still some lads that were below the standard. And now you see it getting better every year. The money's coming in more and more, to the point where I think that it's really up there. It's a different style of game. It's a summer game, so it's slower. The pace varies. It doesn't feel slower when you're on the field, I can tell you, but it's just a different cadence and tempo to the game, you know. And I think when you see a team like the MLS Cup champions in Atlanta, with Miguel Almiron and Joseph Martinez, for those who don't know, Miguel Almiron's Paraguayan international. They'll know him soon because he's going to sign for one of the Premier League teams in the month of January, reportedly Newcastle or West Ham. And you got Joseph Martinez, a Venezuelan, and you have all these, young South Americans.
You think Mike Ashley's actually going to spend some money?
Well, we'll see. Might not be Mike Ashley, but I know they're keen on him. He's a wonderful player, left footer, fast. So you're starting to see, 11s, 13, 14 players at such a high level, and to me it's inevitable that this will be one of the strongest in the world.
Yeah, and I think there's an amazing appetite for football in North America, isn't there? I mean, when you look at you mentioned Atlanta, they've 2 years.
Yeah.
And
2 years.
They win the MLS Cup.
Yeah.
MLS Cup, 73,000 crowd there in Atlanta.
Yeah, because they do it right.
Amazing.
It is. Yeah. They do it right though. They build a training ground. They get the infrastructure. They invest in young players who are profitable, who are going to make them money, and have did that in Atlanta, and they're sort of blueprint for everybody else. We've got Nashville coming, David Beckham in Miami. Yeah. The cities are wonderful. So there's loads of upside to MLS. It's still a bit behind. It's going to take time, but it's coming, and it's coming really quickly.
Yeah. You retired in 2015.
Yep.
and you started doing analysis for TSN.
I did.
How did that come about? Was it just because of your connections with TFC?
Yeah, the first connection was, I asked the communications manager at TFC if there was any opportunity for me to go on a Premier League show. There's two broadcasters in Canada, there's Sportsnet and there's TSN, so I was open to either at the time, and thankfully for me, TSN took up the opportunity, and I went and I did some shows when I played in the off-season. Fortunately, it became more consistent, and to the point where when Jason DeVos, the Canadian international and ex-Wigan and Ipswich player, he moved into a fantastic role with Canada Soccer. It then freed up all his shifts for me, and I just kind of moved into his role.
Enjoy that?
I do. I really enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. It's nothing's like playing. Nothing will ever imitate that, but it's close.
Yeah.
And I really I call TFC games, so I'm the colour commentator for TFC. That's very much like playing, because it's random. You have good days, you have bad days, and you're clear sometimes, and you see the action. And other days it's more difficult, so I enjoy it.
So what are you doing when you're not on TSC?
I'm very passionate about the grassroots side of the game, so I do some stuff on that. I'm probably going to get more into that in the new year, and partner with somebody and try and really create a high performance pathway for the kids here. I think there's a lot of talent here. There's a lot of opportunity heading towards the Home World Cup in 2026. So I'm passionate about that. I'm going to really get into that. I do some leadership and teamwork stuff with a great friend of mine called Nancy Spotton, and her and I are working on a number of projects and how we can help build culture and values within any organisation.
So it sounds like your intention is to stay in Canada.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah, you never say never in football, do you? You don't know what comes up. But
and how do the family like being here?
They love it. My two boys, 10 and 11, they're very happy here. They're budding young soccer players themselves, and sorry for saying soccer, but I'm so used to it here in Canada.
I know. I think this is the first time I've talked about football for a while. But the family's settled. You're settled.
Yeah,
things are looking pretty good.
Yeah, they are.
Before we started recording, I think I mentioned about Tony Mowbray and asked you whether you'd ever come across him in your career. Yeah, you have. I have a number of times, and I know Tony pretty well, but never through my playing career, but more my brother's. Right. He signed. He played for Tony at Hibs, at Hibernian FC in Scotland, and then he played for Tony at Celtic as well. Right. So he knows Tony really well. A brilliant coach, like a great guy first and foremost, and a great coach, a guy with great ideas in the game. Was terrific for Hibs. Had such an exciting team at Hibs. Right. The sad thing is, if that Hibs team could have somehow found the investment to keep the lads together, they probably would have won the league. Yeah. They had Gary Caldwell, they had Scott Brown, they had Kevin Thompson, who went to Middlesbrough. They had Gary O'Connor, who went to Russia and played for. They ended up with Steve Whittaker, played a little bit in Norwich, Rangers. So they had about, in the end, 8 or 9. Stephen Fletcher. Well, I think given the difficulties Blackburn have been through since the Venky's took over at the club, and they got rid of Sam Allardyce and went through, I can't remember however many managers in so many years. I mean, Tony Mowbray's brought a great stability to the club. And I think although it's disappointing to get relegated 2 years ago, I think actually having his first full season in League One, and coming straight back has helped to stabilise things. And you never hear a bad word said about him. Yeah, good, I'm glad about that, because like I say, he's a great guy as well, and he deserves his success. Yeah. You've never thought about management? I've thought about it. I think about it every day, probably. But maybe I'm going in the old Ryan Nelsen thought process, where managers get sacked and they have to move and leave cities, and I kind of like Toronto. Just before we finish, I've just got a couple of odd things I want to ask you about. Yeah. I mentioned about Gary Lineker and Danny Baker doing a podcast, and Gary said on a podcast I listened to recently, he never ever listened to a half-time talk by the manager. He just used to sit there and nod his head. Yeah, well, he's a striker. He's selfish, isn't he? That's what strikers do. Probably only concerned if he scored a goal or so, but I listened to every single talk that manager gave. Well, I guess as captain of teams as well, you would take those instructions onto the field, weren't you? What's the daftest thing you ever did on a football pitch? The daftest thing, probably getting sent off. There's nothing worse than that feeling of,
walking off the field, and especially in a away stadium, and fans are giving you abuse.
I remember when Ryan Nelsen was there. Ryan flew his top when you got sent off. Not because of what you'd done, but because of the referee.
Kansas City, he wasn't happy. It was a high foot, wasn't it? It was never a red card. That.
Right. 2 more questions, Stephen. Who's the central defender that you most admire? As a central defender yourself?
Yeah, great question. I think I'm going towards Van Dijk, but I love Koulibaly at Napoli as well, and I've got a great deal of respect for Sergio Ramos and the winner that he is, but I think he's maybe just in the downside of his career now, even though he's still playing for Real Madrid.
Yeah. Did you have a nickname when you were playing?
No, not really. I used to, I'd get called Skip if I was captain a lot of times at Burnley especially, and sometimes Steve-O, but never really a nickname.
Yeah, right. How would you like to be remembered as a footballer?
Pretty simple, just someone who gave their all, who was completely committed to any club he played for. I mentioned a few times the privilege it is to play professional football. I think the older you get and the more years you're out the game, you realise what a position you were in, what a life it is, and to grasp every opportunity you get. And the only way you can grasp opportunities is by giving your all, working hard, being professional. I think I did all these things pretty well. I don't think I had abundance of talent. I don't care about that. I can look in the mirror now and say, okay, I gave everything I had. I played at some great clubs. I played for my country. I played with my brother, with my country. There's so many achievements that I'm very proud of, and that to me is the legacy that I have.
Okay. That's great. Okay, well, thanks very much for talking to me for the podcast today. It really has been a pleasure, and I've enjoyed listening to your stories. Wish you every success for the future, whatever that holds for you.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it.
You're listening to the BRFCS podcast, the only podcast approved to cover the 2018-2019 season by the New York City Rovers. Don't forget to check out www.brfcs.com.
By the way, massive thank you to Joe Bamford, BRFCS forum member, and his band The Symmetry for providing all the incidental music used in this episode. I hope you'll look them up on Facebook, and if they're playing live near to you, well, go and see them.